Kurtop here, and this is 100 ancient ruins that look like alien bases. Molten fortresses. In the Scottish Highlands, there are ruins that still baffle archaeologists. At first glance, they appear to be ordinary fortifications from the Bronze and Iron Ages, stone walls, remains of dwellings, and traces of fires. But a closer look reveals that the stones have been molten. Entire sections of the walls appear to have been fired. The rocks have fused together, turning into a single glassy monolith. This is not the result of a fire. Sandstone melts at over 1,000 degrees Celsius. To achieve this effect, a fire must be maintained for several days, creating a confined space where heat cannot escape. This means someone didn't simply build these fortresses, they deliberately burned them, turning them into solid blocks. Experiments in the 20th century showed that this effect can only be achieved through artificial control. Scientists Wallace Thornycroft and Vere Gordon Childe repeated the process. They set fire to a wall made of slabs and wooden layers and lined it with clay. After 3 hours of fire, the structure collapsed, but parts of the stone were indeed fused. It later became clear the temperature had to be maintained for several days with a constant supply of oxygen. In other words, this was a technology, not an accident. Someone in a time before metal was in common use already understood how to control heat. Similar forts were later found throughout Northern Europe. More than 200 sites where stone was melted by people. Why exactly then, no one knows. But this strange knowledge of fire, which doesn't destroy but binds, has a sense of something too sophisticated for its time. As if this isn't just ancient engineering, but a technology passed down from time immemorial, the meaning of which we still can't decipher. After all, we could have seen similar technology in ancient Egypt with its melted steps. Traces of fire under megaliths. Under many ancient megalithic structures, archaeologists find charred layers. But these are not the remains of fires. The temperature was too high to be created by ordinary people. The stones are melted in places, as if they were exposed to plasma or a powerful energy source. In Puma Punku and Tiwanaku in Bolivia, traces are visible on basalt slabs, as if they were cut with a hot tool. In Egypt, melted edges of blocks are recorded where there should be neither fire nor volcanism. Scientists explain this by random natural processes, but the temperature clearly exceeded the level of any natural fire. Too many coincidences, as if in ancient times energy comparable to modern plasma cutting or even more powerful was used. Then megaliths cease to be tombs or ritual buildings. They become traces of work with technologies that people simply did not have. Sphinx from Mars. The Sphinx from Mars was discovered in 1976 during archaeological excavations in Egypt. This unique figurine, only 10 centimeters high, has amazed scientists with its strange resemblance to the famous Martian Sphinx, depicted in photographs taken by the Viking 1 space probe. The figurine was found in a tomb dated to the 3rd dynasty of the pharaohs, and it was part of an ancient collection of artifacts. It was engraved with symbols and signs that did not look like traditional Egyptian hieroglyphs and which have not yet been deciphered. Many scientists and UFO researchers began to speculate that the figurine could be evidence of contact between the ancient Egyptians and extraterrestrial civilizations. According to some theories, the Sphinx from Mars was a kind of key or device for communicating with cosmic beings. Ancient texts found near the artifact spoke of gods from heaven who supposedly visited Earth in ancient times. There is a version that it was these gods who gave the figurine to the pharaohs. The Sphinx from Mars continues to attract the attention of scientists and paranormal enthusiasts. Some consider it to be irrefutable proof of the existence of extraterrestrial life, while skeptics argue that this is just a coincidence and an interesting archaeological artifact. The meteorite that changed the course of Christianity. Abruzzo, central Italy, about 100 kilometers from Rome. In the mountains, there is a round lake called Sorrente, about 140 meters in diameter. Geologists believe that this is a meteorite crater. Radiocarbon dating of charred wood from the emissions gives a date of about 312 AD. This is the time of Constantine's battle at the Milvian Bridge. Swedish researcher Jens Ormo has proposed a simple version. A bright bolide and a dust mushroom cloud could look like a shining sign in the sky. Eusebius of Caesarea describes a vision of a cross of light, after which Constantine ordered the symbol to be applied to shields and won. Calculations give an energy of about 1 kiloton, comparable to a small nuclear warhead. The flash was visible from very far away. There are indirect traces in the archaeology nearby. A village deserted in the 4th century, mass graves in the catacombs, local legends about a star sun that split the oaks. There is no direct evidence linking meteorite to Constantine's vision. It is a hypothesis, but the coincidence of dates, scale, and visibility makes it one of the most convincing. A natural phenomenon could have become the trigger for the decision after which Christianity was legalized throughout the Roman Empire. Baltic Disk. 2011. Swedish divers scan the bottom and see a perfect circle, 60 meters in diameter. An even furrow extends from it, as if something slowed down along the seabed for a long time and landed. The photo flies around the media. Underwater flying saucer, Millennium Falcon. Tourists book places on boats. Ufologists are already writing books. 2025. A team of geologists takes an underwater LiDAR scan and conducts their own thorough research. The structure is strange, but inside there is ordinary granite on the sections of the shell of glacial rocks. Simply put, a boulder that rolled ice for 1,000 years until it got stuck in the silt and left a beautiful alien trace. The conclusion can be made as with the findings earlier. Sometimes the perfect plate is just a stone polished by a glacier. But it was this stone that made people dive to the bottom, bring new equipment, and clearly show how science destroys myths and fakes. The stone remained a stone, and the Baltic got its first underwater geopark. The oldest galaxy? When researchers spotted a tiny reddish glow in the James Webb data stream, they decided to check if it was an algorithm error. Their calculations were confirmed. They were looking at a galaxy possibly born just 90 million years after the Big Bang. They named it Capitaro, after an Italian mountain equally ancient and motionless. If confirmed, the discovery would put an end to dozens of theories. According to standard models, the universe simply couldn't have produced such a massive object in such a short time. Capitaro glows too brightly for its age and, according to preliminary estimates, contains about 1 billion stars, as if someone had pressed the evolutionary accelerator button. Some scientists suggest that the observed signal is not a galaxy, but a nearby substellar object like a brown dwarf. But the spectrum doesn't match. Others say we're seeing something new, an intermediate form between a star and an entire system, a primordial framework from which worlds later emerge. If Capitaro is indeed a galaxy, then we're looking at the moment when the darkness first receded, the birth of the first light sources which began to disperse the primordial void. While scientists debate what exactly is reflected in this data, one thing is clear. Each new Webb image doesn't so much answer as break old patterns. The universe behaves as if it deliberately doesn't want to be unraveled. Flying Tic Tac. A UFO has been found on Mars again. At least that's what social media users decided when they saw a strange photo taken by a NASA rover. A smooth cylindrical object similar to the famous Tic Tac candy appeared in the frame among the rocks and dust. The play of light and shadows made it even more mysterious. It seems as if it is hovering above the surface. This photo was not taken yesterday. It was taken by the Curiosity rover back in 2020 during the search for traces of ancient life. But attention to it only flared up now when one of the Reddit users posted a photo with the caption "Tic Tac on Mars." And then it all started. Some even compared it to the same UFO that U.S. Navy pilot David Fravor observed over the Pacific Ocean in 2004. Then the pilot described a perfectly white object without wings or windows, shaped like a Tic Tac, that was moving at incredible speed and suddenly disappeared from radar. But if we return to Mars, it is most likely just an unusual stone. It seems to be flying due to the peculiarities of the shooting and shadows. The world's greatest mystery. The underwater ruins of an ancient city estimated to be 10,000 years old have been discovered off the coast of the Japanese island of Yonaguni. This complex, reminiscent of a pyramid, a castle, temples, an arch, and a stadium, is connected by roads. In 2007, marine biologist Masaaki Kimura described the main structure as a monolithic step pyramid, 25 m high. He suggested that the structures were built by the Jomon people who lived on the islands 14,000 years ago. However, Professor Robert Schoch of Boston University expressed the opinion that the Yonaguni Monument is a natural geological formation, 37 years have passed since the first discovery of the Japanese Atlantis in 1986, but its origin is still shrouded in mystery. Kimura proposed the theory that it was part of the continent of Mu that was lost due to the disaster. He also found stone images, including an underwater sphinx. Seismologist Toru Uchi from Kobe University supported Kimura's hypothesis, rejecting the assumption that the structures had a natural origin. However, Professor Shok remains unconvinced, arguing that the structure is not artificial and its characteristics are the result of natural processes. So, the depths of the sea near Yonaguni continue to hold the mystery of these amazing structures, remaining the subject of discussion and research by scientists. Trillions of alien sensors. Richard Bandurek speaks quietly, like a man who knows his words are being recorded. A former NASA and Lockheed Martin engineer, he spent decades designing propulsion systems and now claims that the Earth is strewn with invisible devices of extraterrestrial origin. According to him, they've been here for a long time and we're starting to find them. He claims these aren't shipwrecks, but a network of tiny sensors, trillions of microscopic structures scattered across the planet. Some of them, he claims, are capable of changing shape and camouflaging themselves in their environment. His team allegedly observed one such fragment under a microscope, a piece of metal pulsating as if aware it was being watched. Bandurek claims to have seen these objects dissolve into dust, and it's worth trying to study them. But analysis revealed something that shouldn't be there. The isotopic composition doesn't match any known objects on Earth. After his publication, access to his materials was blocked, the lab was transferred to a private entity, and the engineer himself was suspended. Now he speaks openly. This isn't our technology. It's too ancient and too smart. According to him, the network operates as a sensor surveillance system, not for attack, but for recording life, an invisible antenna web enveloping the planet. One can be skeptical of the engineer's words, but with each new satellite, with each discovery that hints at artificial intervention in the natural world, the line between incredible and quite possible becomes thinner. Sometimes it seems as if we are being studied with the same interest with which we observe other worlds. Roswell Discamwak. The Roswell disk is a mystical artifact rumored to have been found near Roswell, New Mexico after the famous 1947 UFO incident. According to some reports, the disk was part of the wreckage of an unidentified flying object. The disk was a round metal plate with a diameter of about 3 meters, with unusual symbols and markings on the surface that could not be attributed to any known terrestrial language. The material from which the disk was made turned out to be unidentified and had strange properties. Some sources claim that the disk was given into military hands and studied in secret laboratories. Those who have been able to see it have spoken of its potential connection to extraterrestrial technology and the ability to store information superior to all earthly counterparts. Over time, the Roswell disk has become a symbol of conspiracy theories and mysteries related to UFOs. Its existence is still disputed and is the subject of debate among scientists and researchers of the paranormal. The disk has become a legend in UFO circles, and many believe it is kept in secret government archives, along with other artifacts that point to extraterrestrial interference in the affairs of mankind. Triangular Shield. 20 kilometers southeast of Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria, archaeologists have unearthed a rare Roman watchtower. Its base is a regular triangle with a side of about 7 meters, dating from the coins of Emperor Caracalla, the end of the 2nd century AD. This is unusual for the Roman Empire. Most outposts were square or round. The question arises, why a triangle? The narrow top of the tower faces the slope. A blow from a battering ram or stone slides along the wall without destroying the masonry. Inside, they found a stone well and the remains of a wooden floor, rebuilt during the Byzantine and Second Bulgarian Kingdom, 12th century. Such forms are found only on the border with watchtowers. The Romans called such borderlines limes. That is, the entire system of ramparts, roads, and fortresses along the border. In Bulgaria, this is the earliest example of irregular planning. Instead of a standard template, engineers chose a geometry that more closely matched the mountainous terrain. Today, the tower is part of the Ervich Museum complex. It shows that Roman builders knew how to deviate from standards if local conditions required it. Have they detected a real alien? It appeared out of the blue, the third interstellar visitor to fly through the solar system. 3I/ATLAS, neither a comet nor an asteroid nor anything you'd write down in a school textbook. Astronomers immediately noticed something odd. The object didn't reflect sunlight but seemed to emit it. This behavior defies the familiar laws of physics. Surrounding the body is a cloud of dust, but inside, according to calculations, is something dense and geometrically regular. Mathematician Eric Quito and astrophysicist Avi Loeb, the same one who once suggested that Oumuamua might be an artificial probe, have once again raised the awkward question, if it's not a comet or a stellar fragment, then what is it? Their model showed that the observed glow is best explained by an internal energy source. 3I/ATLAS is located between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter, 3.5 times farther from the Sun than Earth. But even there, the object remains visible. The closer it gets to the star, the more the color of its surface changes, as if reacting. The James Webb Telescope is already trained on it, and rumor has it that the data it receives has forced scientists to re-examine their own observation protocols. If it's a piece of the star, it should have cooled millions of years ago. If it's a spaceship, it doesn't resemble any technology we know. And while official reports are being put on hold for revision, a body remains in the sky that behaves as if it were alive and under control. For the first time in history, officials from many countries aren't calling it an optical illusion. Everyone is simply waiting. Hollow Earth, the last door. If someone had told me about this 10 years ago, I would have simply chuckled. Vikings, Antarctica, the underworld, Nazis who had gone inside the planet, it all sounded like crazy science fiction. But the deeper I delve into documents, diaries, declassified reports, the more I understand. This is not just nonsense. It was part of an ideological construct. According to one theory, the Nazis believed in the existence of a hollow Earth, a space inside the planet where an ancient civilization had survived. Paradise, Agartha, the inner world. The interpretations differ, but the essence is the same. It is supposedly a place of power that has eluded destruction and time. The archives do indeed contain mentions of expeditions to Antarctica, planes that disappeared without a trace, pilots' stories about a mysterious glow that emanated not from the sky, but from under their feet. Some of these ideas may have originated in the Ahnenerbe, some came later among those fleeing. It doesn't matter who the author was, what matters is how these myths fit into the worldview, not as a fairy tale, as a refuge. Extraterrestrial metal in ancient burials. Archaeologists have made a sensational discovery in Poland that changes our understanding of the technical capabilities of ancient societies. In 2 burials from the early Iron Age, dating back to 700 and 5600 BC, researchers have found 4 artifacts, 3 bracelets, and a pin made of meteoric iron. The objects were found in Częstochowa, southern Poland, and had long been kept in a local museum. Only recently, with the help of modern technology, has their unique origin been established. An analysis of the metal's composition using X-ray scanning and electron microscopy showed that the iron contains high amounts of nickel and cobalt, characteristic of rare ataxic meteorites. Moreover, the ornaments on the bracelets were probably made using different types of iron, possibly to create a pattern. This may be the oldest example of patterned iron known to mankind. Meteoric iron is not just a material. In ancient times, it was often considered a heavenly gift and was used to create objects for special purposes. Similar finds can be found, for example, in the tomb of Tutankhamun in Egypt, where a dagger made of meteorite iron was found. And now there is confirmation that such technologies were known in Europe centuries before Rome. Scientists assume that the iron was probably mined locally, possibly after the observed meteorite fall. This confirms that the objects had not only practical but also ritual value. Missile versus mirror. The video shown in the U.S. Congress is only a few seconds long. It shows a Hellfire missile, the standard weapon for drones, flying toward a bright metallic object over the sea off the coast of Yemen. An explosive moment, a flash, and nothing. The impact seems to reflect off the mirror. No fire, no signs of destruction. Just a brief shake of the frame and the surprised voice of the cameraman. This isn't footage from a science fiction film, but an official video released by the House Subcommittee on Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena. For the military, anything unclassified must be explained. But there's no explanation here. The object doesn't look like a drone, doesn't behave like a missile, and doesn't leave a plasma trail. It reflects energy as if it had its own magnetic field. Online, it's already being called the Yemeni Mirror, a body capable of absorbing an impact. Congress is making no secret. This isn't a U.S. test weapon or a confirmed enemy object. This is a rare moment when an official structure reveals to the world something it can't explain itself. What do you think? Could it be a new American weapon or a unique military facility capable of repelling enemy missiles like a mirror reflects light? Singing Temple Underground. Imagine descending 3 floors under the Maltese soil in Ħal Saflieni. The corridors were carved out 5,000 years ago, but the main magic is in the Oracle Hall. A whisper there turns into a hum, and a low male voice at a frequency of about 111 Hz makes the walls vibrate so much that the chest trembles. Scientists have checked. This is exactly the resonance of the human body. A minute and a half, and you feel like the sound is coming from inside the bones. In the fall of 2024, Italian acoustics illuminated the temple with a laser scanner and found another cavity behind a filled-in manhole. It also sings at the same 111 Hz. It turns out that the ancient masters deliberately carved out a whole chain of sound rooms. The priest said one word, and the vibrations rolled throughout the Hypogeum, putting those present into a light trance. A ritual does not need better technology. The chamber is not being cleared yet for fear of collapsing the vaults, but they are planning to launch a thin microphone probe. If anything other than stone is found there, figurines, vessels, maybe bones, it will become clear that this was not just a crypt, but a laboratory of ancient sound. For now, under a quiet tourist street lives the oldest speaker on the planet, tuned 5,000 years ago and still working without a single crack. There is only one question. How could people 5,000 years ago so accurately calculate the acoustics they needed in the cave? Aliens called home. Former U.S. counterintelligence agent Luis Elizondo has made another big statement. According to him, some UFOs observed by the military clearly have engraved symbols resembling ancient writing. These signs, he claims, could be an attempt by aliens to convey information or even instructions. Elizondo previously headed the secret AATIP program, which studied aerospace threats. He says that he personally saw oval objects with an unusual surface on which symbols similar to hieroglyphs or runes were engraved. He believes that such things are not applied just like that. This is part of communication. Interestingly, some of these symbols are similar in appearance to ancient writings found on Earth. According to him, the Pentagon has long been comparing these signs with ancient alphabets, trying to find matches. Perhaps aliens use a universal visual language, which means that we have more in common than it seems. Elizondo even mentioned the phrase, "they've already called home," hinting at attempts to communicate with other worlds. Elizondo's testimony is confirmed by other eyewitnesses. Military pilot Jake Barber said he saw an object of non-human origin just 150 feet away from him. Later, he was allegedly lifted aboard a helicopter. Elizondo is sure that there are many such devices, and U.S. intelligence has been studying them for a long time, including fragments, microchips, and even biomaterials. He calls on the authorities to disclose this data and begin an honest dialogue with society. Water at the Dwarf. When the Transiting Earth Survey satellite, TESS, transmitted its first data about the planet TOI 1846b, scientists expected to see another hot, lifeless sphere, a typical super-Earth orbiting a red dwarf. But with each new observation, it became clear this world defies conventional wisdom. TOI 1846b is almost twice the size of Earth and 4 times its mass. It orbits its star every 4 days, so close that the surface temperature rises to 300 degrees Celsius. But even under these conditions, the instruments detected signals indicating something impossible. Traces of water. Not oceans as we understand them, but deep layers of liquid hidden beneath a rocky crust or a thick atmosphere. Scientists are cautious in their formulations, but the gist remains. Even in hell, water can exist. And if it can, then the scenarios for its preservation on planets are infinitely broader than we thought. It's like finding pottery where clay shouldn't be. Nature constantly breaks its own laws. TOI 1846b orbits a star more than 7 billion years old. It's an ancient system, surviving long after many of its neighbors have faded. If there truly is water there, it's older than all human history, older than Earth itself. Perhaps hidden in this insane heat are chemical traces of how water survives the death of planets, only to one day become its beginning again. Soon, the James Webb Space Telescope and the future extremely large telescopes, which are being built in the Atacama, will be looking there. The driest places on Earth are searching for water hundreds of light years away. Mars Archives. There is too much talk about Mars, but there is one strange coincidence. Almost all ancient peoples mention the red star in legends as a place where gods lived or where they came from. The Sumerians associated it with the god of war, Indian epics, with heavenly chariots, and the Egyptians generally called it the place of wanderers. Modern researchers add fuel to the fire. Back in the 70s, rumors came to Earth about secret photos from orbit where the ruins of cities were supposedly visible. These photos were never officially published, and those that are available today raise new questions. Mars looks like a huge library whose pages are covered with billions of years of history, and we see only the cover. Alien Skull. UFO blogger Daily Hodges posted a photo. A tiny gray-brown skull on his palm. The forehead is swollen, the back of the head is elongated, the eye sockets are huge, and there is no lower jaw. The author claims that his friend found it in Mexico near an old landfill. This is not a doll or a monkey. The bone is fragile. The structure is like a human, but the proportions are completely different. The photo instantly spread. Someone saw evidence of the grays. Someone is screaming about a viral fake. Doctors and anthropologists have already answered. The photo most likely shows part of the skull of a Cody baby, South American Cody. These animals have a large head box, and the lower jaw often falls off after decomposition, hence the alien appearance. The scale is also eloquent. The length of the skull is only 5 centimeters, not enough for an adult alien. Hodges himself swears that he will conduct an X-ray and DNA test, but until the results are in, he asks to leave a chance for a miracle. The internet, as usual, is divided. Some are catching likes on the real alien, while others remind us that any bone without context is ideal material for a sensation. For now, the most unusual extraterrestrial skull of the season remains without a passport. Either it's a dead coati or another hoax, skillfully photographed against a dark background. Ancient paintings of UFOs. Recently, scientists often come across images of circles and triangles on the walls of ancient temples and caves. It may seem mundane, but the presence of flying objects in medieval religious paintings is surprising. I will show you 9 paintings that, according to ufologists, depict alien objects. The Annunciation with Saint Emetius, 1486, painting by Carlo Crivelli. The ray of light from heaven in the picture is traditionally interpreted as a divine broadcast, but some ufologists see a UFO in this image. The Crucifixion of Christ, 1350, painting from the Serbian monastery of Visoki Dekani. The picture shows 2 objects in the air that look similar to aircraft. The official version says that these are the moon and the sun, although in the Christian tradition, they are not deified. The Ascension of Christ, 1710, the work of Arent de Gelder, stored in Cambridge. It depicts a disc-shaped object illuminating John the Baptist and Jesus Christ. Some believe that the artist may have conveyed hidden knowledge about UFOs. Madonna with Saint Giovannino of 15th century, author Domenico Ghirlandaio. The painting shows a flying object above the Madonna's shoulder, which is pointed at by a man with a dog. Tapestry, Triumph of Summer, 1538, created in Bruges, kept in the Bavarian Museum in Germany. The tapestry depicts 3 disc-shaped objects which ufologists interpret as UFOs. The Miracle of Snow, 1428-1432, work by Masolino da Panicale. The painting depicts an event from 4th century Rome where disc-shaped objects are visible in the air. Israel, Trust in the Lord, 17th century, painting from the Dominican monastery in Sighisoara, Transylvania. It shows a giant disc-shaped object above a burning church. Glorification of the Sacrament of the Eucharist, 1600, author Bonaventura Salimbeni. The painting depicts Jesus Christ and God the Father with a globe, which some researchers interpret as a time control panel. The Crucifixion of Christ, 16th century, kept in the Svetitskhovely Temple in Mitskata, Georgia. On the sides of the cross there are objects with human faces, which ufologists consider to be confirmation of the extraterrestrial origin of Jesus Christ. As you may have noticed, all these paintings were painted in completely different parts of the planet, but the objects are to some extent similar to each other. Space smuggling. Every era has its secret desires, even those who fly beyond Earth. Space is a place where everything is calculated down to the gram, but it is there that people most often remember that they are not just part of a mission, but a living being who craves a sense of home. Spring, 1965, Gemini 3 mission. 2 astronauts, Gus Grissom and John Young, are conducting the first tests of a new capsule. Everything is going according to plan until Young pulls a corned beef sandwich from his pocket. A real one from a cafe near the spaceport. Grissom laughs, takes a bite, and then chaos erupts. Crumbs of meat and bread fly around the compartment, float in the air, and stick to instruments. In zero gravity, even a crumb is a dangerous projectile, capable of short-circuiting electronics. The sandwich is immediately removed, but a scandal erupts back on Earth. The story reaches Congress and becomes the world's first space smuggling. But while Americans took the risk for a joke, Soviet cosmonauts made it part of their tradition. Flasks of cognac, jars of pickles, and toast sets would secretly appear on board, appearing in fake flight logs. Engineers, doctors, and technicians, everyone knew, but they kept quiet. After challenging spacewalks, when the body vibrated with fatigue, one sip of something familiar would restore balance. When you watch archival footage, you realize this habit isn't about breaking discipline, it's about humanity. Where everything is cold, sterile, and dangerous, people search for something that reminds them of life. A small jar of pickles in zero gravity says more about us than any talk of progress. We may conquer planets, but we still don't stray far from our home kitchens. Spaceship in Turkey. In Turkey, near the city of Şanlıurfa, there is one of the most mysterious archaeological sites in the world, Gobekli Tepe. This complex, which is more than 12,000 years old, consists of massive stone structures laid out in circles. Gobekli Tepe is considered the oldest known temple complex on Earth. Megaliths, up to 6 meters high and weighing several tons, amaze with their precision and craftsmanship. The stone slabs are decorated with carvings depicting animals and abstract symbols. This level of art and engineering raises many questions about how ancient people were able to create such complex structures without modern technology. Researchers suggest that the construction of Gobekli Tepe could be associated with extraterrestrial technology. These hypotheses are based on the complex's extraordinary precision and scale, which some believe could only have been achieved through advanced technology, possibly passed down by alien civilizations. Gobekli Tepe continues to attract the attention of scientists and enthusiasts from around the world, fueling interest in ancient mysteries and possible contacts with extraterrestrial beings. Dragon houses and Mount Ojai. The dragon houses on the island of Euboea in Greece are mysterious megalithic structures that amaze with their massiveness and precision. These ancient structures, built from huge stone blocks without the use of binding mortar, date back to around the 8th century BC. Legends associate dragon houses with the gods, particularly Zeus, and describe them as places of sacred rituals and the habitat of ancient dragons who guard these territories. Mount Ojai, where some of the dragon houses are located, is considered a place of contact with the gods due to its remoteness and majestic location. In ancient Greek mythology, mountains were often associated with the abodes of the gods and places of their manifestations. This mountain, towering above the surrounding landscape, could be perceived as a sacred place where divine meetings and rituals took place. Archaeologists face many difficulties when studying these megalithic structures. One of the main mysteries is how the ancient builders were able to transport and lay such huge stone blocks on the tops of the mountains. The logistics and technical aspects of their construction remain unclear, especially given the lack of modern tools and equipment. There is also no exact data on the time and purpose of the construction of these structures, which complicates their study and interpretation. According to legend, Zeus used these places for his meetings with people and other gods. The dragons mentioned in legends could be symbols of his strength and protection of sacred places. There is a theory that the dragon houses could be places of contact with aliens. Proponents of this hypothesis argue that the unusual architecture and precise geometry of these buildings indicate the possible influence of extraterrestrial civilizations. They believe that the ancient Greeks may have interpreted encounters with aliens as contacts with the gods, which was reflected in their myths and legends. Does a telescope's shape matter? Astronomers often say that mirror size is the limit of our vision. The James Webb Telescope was the maximum possible. Its hexagonal mirror, 6.5 meters in diameter, is folded like an orchid, and no larger could be launched into space. But physicists from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute proposed changing the shape of the mirror rather than enlarging it. They came up with a rectangular mirror, a narrow but long strip stretching 20 meters from edge to edge. It collects less light per unit of time, but sees with the same resolution as a circle 10 times larger in diameter. Such a telescope could be deployed in space without complex sections, without the risk of breakage, using a standard rocket. The project has already been named the Habitable Worlds Observatory. Its goal is to see Earth-like planets at distances of up to 10 parsecs, not as dots, but as worlds with atmospheres, clouds, and possibly oceans. Models show that over 3 years of observations, such a rectangle could reveal more than 20 potentially habitable worlds around stars similar to our Sun. There's something symbolic about this. To find new Earths, humanity had to abandon the ideal circle, something considered perfect for centuries. Perhaps life itself in the universe doesn't have to be symmetrical either. Sometimes the answer lies precisely from a different angle. The mystery of the flying stones. India is always shrouded in secrets and mysteries. In any corner of it, you can encounter something amazing and incredible. Many come here for new experiences, to discover unknown spiritual possibilities in themselves. Once you have visited this amazing country, it is impossible to forget it. One of the mysteries of India is the levitating stones in the small village of Shivapur, which is located 200 kilometers from Baalbek. Near the local temple, there are several boulders whose weight exceeds 50 kilograms. These stones, according to local residents, can rise into the air. It takes 11 men to lift the first, heavier stone. They must stand around it and say certain words. After this, the stone begins to levitate and can be held with one finger. The smaller boulder requires 9 men to lift. There is also a third stone weighing over 60 kilograms, which only the monks of the temple can lift. The origin of these stones is mysterious. Some believe they were sent by the gods. Others think they broke off from a nearby rock. A local resident who takes care of the temple claims that the stones break from time to time, and he replaces them with new ones by chipping them from the rock. But even new stones retain their flying properties. Some scientists suggest that ancient people were able to move objects with the power of thought, as, for example, during the construction of the Egyptian pyramids. The knowledge of levitation may have been lost, but sometimes resurfaces in places like Shivapur. Interestingly, in the last century, Edward Leedskalnin, an immigrant from Latvia, used similar methods to build his coral castle in Florida, which only confirms the existence of such knowledge. These unexplained phenomena support the hypothesis of extraterrestrial influence on ancient civilizations, suggesting that some technologies or methods may have been transmitted to humanity by representatives of other worlds. We revived ancient creatures. In northern Alaska, where permafrost preserves the scent of ancient soil, a team of researchers from the University of Colorado drilled a tunnel through the ice to retrieve samples dating back 40,000 years. And what they found resembles stills from a science film that suddenly became a documentary. The samples contained microorganisms that had awakened. They didn't come to life instantly. It took months. At first, the scientists thought the colonies were simply inert, but after a while, they began to multiply. Under a microscope, threads and clumps appeared, gradually transforming into stable communities. It was as if the microbes were waiting for a signal to begin breathing again. The ancient life forms began to emit carbon dioxide, and some of it methane. This process is invisible, but it is precisely this that can change the climate. Gases accumulated under the ice for millions of years are beginning to emerge. And simultaneously, what had been dormant in the frozen layers for millennia emerges with them. In 2022, a nearly 50,000-year-old virus was awakened in Siberia. It's harmless to humans, but the fact itself proved that ancient pathogens haven't disappeared. They're simply waiting for warmer weather. Similar cases are now being recorded in Canada, Greenland, and Alaska. Scientists say there's no threat yet. But when you look at the test tubes where ancient bacteria are once again moving, it's hard not to feel a sense of unease. We're increasingly interfering with the planet's archives without fully understanding what we're extracting. And perhaps one day the ice will truly respond. Not with cold, but with something living. Something that remembers Earth even before humans appeared on it. Supernatural destruction of Mohenjo-Daro. In 1922, an officer from the Archaeological Survey of India, along with a Buddhist monk, went to the area, which turned out to be a religious monument. Instead of mounds of mud and stones, an entire Bronze Age city with a grid of streets, complex drainage systems, and flush toilets was discovered in Sindh, modern-day Pakistan. The city was part of the Harappan civilization, which reached its peak 5,000 years ago and ceased to exist around 1900 BC. The Mound of the Dead is the legacy of one of the oldest civilizations. The inhabitants of Mohenjo-Daro were in no way inferior to Egypt and ancient Mesopotamia. Once upon a time, this region was inhabited by about 35,000 people, but archaeologists managed to find only 43 skeletons that have survived to this day. The city's disappearance was mysterious, but in 1977, a British researcher discovered evidence suggesting it was caused by a massive explosion. Melted rocks and calcified skeletons suggest that the inhabitants of Mohenjo-Daro died instantly. In 2014, a doctor of mineralogy conducted a series of analyses and tests which suggests a connection between the Harappan civilization and aliens. This is indicated not only by the high level of development of the local residents, but also by the fact that they burned at a temperature of several thousand degrees. There are no volcanoes here, and the technology to reach such temperatures did not exist. If you add water. We are used to thinking that life requires one simple ingredient, water. And then there is a temptation. What if we bring it where it does not exist? The Moon, Mars, Venus, Mercury. 4 different stories, 4 different endings. The Moon already has water, in the form of ice at the poles, hidden in the eternal darkness of craters. Add oceans, and we see a planet with stormy tides. But the Moon is too small to hold an atmosphere. The water will quickly evaporate into space, leaving only a short-lived sea. The Moon will not become a second home. It will remain a dead desert, only temporarily shiny. Mars looks more promising. There are glaciers there. There was water in ancient times. If we fill it with oceans, the planet will come alive. The air will become denser, clouds will appear, the climate will change. But Mars is not protected by a magnetic field, and the solar wind will gradually tear off the atmosphere. Any second Earth there will be temporary. In thousands of years, the water will go back into space. Venus is the other side of history. If you add water to a place with hellish heat and acid clouds, it will boil instantly. You will get an ocean of steam, the greenhouse effect will increase, the temperature will become even higher. It is impossible to flood Venus with water. It will only destroy it. To revive this world, you first need to cool it and destroy the dense atmosphere, an almost impossible task. Mercury is an extreme case, the closest planet to the Sun with a hot surface and an icy shadow in craters. Water will not linger there. It will boil during the day, freeze at night, and eventually evaporate into space. Mercury is too close to the star to support life, and then it becomes clear. Just add water is not a solution. Only Earth turned out to be that unique platform where water can linger and work for life. The other worlds are too unstable, too hostile, or too small. The water there is not a source of life, but a reminder of how delicate the balance on our planet is. The New Puzzle of Teotihuacan. September 2024. A team from the Mexican Institute of Physics places 4 muon detectors under the Pyramid of the Sun, the same cosmic ray X-rays that recently opened the chambers in Cheops. Over the course of 2 months, the devices collect billions of particles and build a 3D shadow of the monument. Instead of a monolith, a strange picture emerges. A dark ribbon goes down from the central shaft, makes 3 perfect clockwise turns, and freezes in a round cavity 10 meters in diameter. The total length of the passage is about 180 meters. The depth of the final chamber is 48 meters below the base of the pyramid. When archaeologists superimposed the spiral on the relief of the slabs of the upper terrace, it turned out that the drawing coincides with the Quetzalcoatl serpent engraved on the southern steps. Coincidence or plan? There are several versions at once. Drainage. The spiral could collect groundwater and drain it into the Sacred Heart. Ritual. Priests descended along the loops of the underground sun, imitating the path of day through night. And the third version is a cache. When Teotihuacan began to die out, the elite could hide archives and relics in the core and fill up the entrance. It is impossible to open the passage with shovels. The arch rests only on its own weight. Touch it, and the whole spiral will collapse. Therefore, archaeologists decided to enter surgically. They will lower a thin probe camera through an old technological well. If the camera suddenly sees mercury or a glint of gold from below, it will be clear that this is not a drain, but an ancient cache. But while the probe is only being prepared, under the main pyramid of Mexico there is still a twisted corridor, which the world did not even suspect for 2,000 years. Only space is drier. If anywhere on Earth you can feel the breath of another planet, it's the Atacama. This strip of land, sandwiched between the Andes and the coastal Cordillera, hasn't seen rain in 400 years. The air here is so dry that metal rusts slower than humans age, but it's precisely this absolute lifelessness that has made the desert a prime laboratory for space exploration. In San Pedro de Atacama, the air smells of sulfur and salt. During the day, the heat warms up the sand to 40 degrees Celsius, and at night the temperature drops below freezing. There's a silence in which even footsteps sound like gunshots. Everything here is designed for looking up. At an altitude of over 4,000 meters, where the thin air rings like glass, giant antennas stand in a row. ALMA, the Magellan Telescope, and the Very Large Telescope. They capture light that has been traveling to us for billions of years and dissipate it into the finest bands, like a researcher piecing together the universe's past. When you look at these gigantic antennas, you feel they resemble not machines, but living beings, listening to the universe. Their aluminum ears catch the breath of stars, the cold rustle of intergalactic dust, the echoes of distant flashes. In the Atacama, a person literally finds himself between two worlds, rock and space. Sometimes at night, local guides turn off their headlights and the sky turns into a black dome, dotted with millions of needles of light. People stand in silence and watch the Milky Veil rise behind the mountains. At that moment, it becomes clear, if there is one place on Earth where you can hear the universe, it is here, in a place where only space is drier. Aliens inside the Earth. When we talk about extraterrestrial life, we look to the sky. We wait for signals from Mars, Venus, Jupiter's satellites, or distant galaxies. But there is a much more alarming version. We need to look not above, but below, right under our feet. At depths of hundreds of kilometers under the Earth's crust, there are zones that humans have never seen. There are no direct observations there, only indirect seismological data and magnetic anomalies. Scientists record strange bursts of heat that cannot be explained by the movement of magma. In some places, strange sources of radiation are recorded that should not be there. And then there are myths. Ancient legends spoke of underground gods, creatures that lived in the bowels of the earth and from time to time came to the surface. In the 20th century, this idea received a new lease of life, the Hollow Earth hypothesis. The Third Reich's secret expeditions to Antarctica, stories about entrances to underground worlds at the North and South Poles. Science considers this a sick fantasy. But why then do many geophysical anomalies still remain unexplained? Modern ufologists claim that some UFOs do not come from space at all. They emerge from the oceans, from under the ground, from cracks and faults, as if their real base is not in the distant stars, but right here on our planet. And if this is so, then the eerie thought arises that we are looking for neighbors among the stars, but our real neighbors have been living beneath us all this time. And perhaps they are the ones who decide how much we are allowed to know about the universe. The return of the Utsuro-bune. There is a strange entry in Japanese chronicles from 1803. Fishermen from the village of Hariakihara pulled a round lacquered boat the size of a small room out of the water. Inside was a young woman in bright clothes, copper-colored hair, an incomprehensible inscription on the side, and a tightly sealed box that she did not allow anyone to open. The story was quickly added to the local archive, accompanied by drawings, and the object, along with the guest, according to legend, was silently lowered back into the sea. For almost 2 centuries, the event remained folklore, until in 2024, the Ibaraki National Museum found 7 forgotten engravings made by eyewitnesses in a private collection. In them, the boat does not look like a barrel, but like a neat disc with portholes, and the writing along the side resembles a mixture of Sanskrit and Arabic. The museum exhibited the found engravings next to a neat copy of the boat, a disc slightly more than 2 meters, with round windows and a narrow entrance hatch. Scientists argue, some say that before us is an experimental wooden boiler of the Edo era, Others insist that the shape and hermetic assembly are not similar to any known Japanese ship of that time. The story has once again left folklore and entered the field of scientific discussions, and the main one is, could the original lie on the bottom to this day, preserving the secret of the copper box which the girl never opened? Is fishing on Mars possible? Everything we thought we knew about Mars crumbles when we look at images of the Noachis Terra region. In a place of dust and silence, orbiters have discovered a tangled network of ancient riverbeds, more than 15,000 kilometers of stone rivers. They stretch like scars across the plateau, buried beneath layers of sedimentary rock, telling a story that lasted millions of years. These valleys are not dry cracks, but actual traces of water flow. Along them, sedimentary terraces, exposed by erosion, and elongated ridges resembling channels fossilized after the stream disappeared are preserved. Everything suggests that this was a climate capable of supporting rain. It rains on the red planet. The very idea sounds almost heretical, but data from orbiters confirms the atmosphere of Mars was once thick and humid. Scientists call this the Noachian era, a time when the planet was blue. Rivers, lakes, deltas, all of which are now buried under dust, once filled the valleys with life. Water here didn't flow for days or years. It sculpted the landscape, leaving deposits that can still be read today. Everything we see now, the cold desert, rocks, and storms, is just the final scene in a long play. And when Perseverance finds clay minerals or stream-polished rocks, it's essentially digging in an ancient riverbed where something alive might once have been. So it turns out that in ancient times it was possible to fish on Mars? Too much evidence. Fall 2024. The Pentagon publishes a new report on unidentified phenomena. The table shows 757 episodes in just 1 year. More than half were recorded by military pilots. Strange balls on the radar, dark cubes in a transparent shell, objects that go against the wind and sharply go up. Some cases are explained in the usual way. Satellite debris, drones, optics, but about a third fall into the no data for identification column. This means that neither the speed nor the trajectory can be clearly understood because the devices behave as if they are not looking at a material object. The Ministry of Defense says honestly, there are no signs of aliens, but this is exactly the same wording that has been heard for 70 years. The problem remains. The Navy and the Air Force see something regularly. Cameras and thermal imagers record all this, but there is nothing to explain it with. Pilots say, at first you think, a glitch. Then you see the radar spot make a 90-degree angle at the speed of a passenger jet. Such reports used to be buried in safes. Now they are printed in open reports. They just changed the names. And strange arithmetic occurs. The more accurate the sensors become, the more often they catch something for which we have no name. It seems that the sky is silent only when we are not looking too closely. Again, the same recipe. Fear, technology, myth. We see it under the pyramid and on the Pentagon radar. Jupiter's birthday. For a long time, Jupiter was considered the eldest planet in the solar system, but no one could say exactly how much older it was than Earth. Now we have an answer. A team of planetary scientists from Japan and Italy calculated that the giant was born just 1.8 million years after the formation of the solar system. On a cosmic scale, that's a blink of an eye, but it was that very moment that determined the fate of all the other planets. The scientists used an unusual method, computer modeling the behavior of chondrules, silicate microspheres that floated billions of years ago in the dust cloud from which the planets formed. These microscopic particles bear the signatures of the first catastrophes, collisions, flares, and evaporations. Their age and composition can be used to reconstruct the pace of Jupiter's birth. The models showed that the giant emerged when the rest of the solar system was just beginning to condense. Its mass at that time was comparable to Mars, but gravity was already working like a vacuum cleaner, sucking in everything around it. It was Jupiter that was the first force to alter the balance of the young system, pulling out gas, reshuffling orbits, disrupting the formation of several potential planets, and perhaps even saving Earth by absorbing millions of comet impacts. This reconstruction makes Jupiter not just a neighbor but a founder. It is the first trace of living movement in chaos, the center around which the others were organized. Ironically, the largest and brightest object after the Sun is the result of a practically childish experiment in the universe. Jupiter emerged as an embryonic Mars, gained mass in a matter of millions of years, and became the one that determined everything else. 4.5 billion years have passed since then, but even now, looking at it through a telescope, one can imagine how a planet was born from a hot cloud of gas, the first to learn to be a giant. The Silver Cup of Quetzalcoatl. Imagine dawn over Teotihuacan, the top of the Pyramid of the Sun. The priest lifts up a shiny disc. Nothing like it had ever been seen before. Chronicles would later call it the Cup of Quetzalcoatl. According to legend, it was in this cup that the feathered teacher god soared to the sky and became the morning star. There are few descriptions, but they all agree. The shape is perfectly round, the metal shines so brightly that it seems liquid, and along the edges there are not drawings but smooth windows like hatches. When the cup was placed on the altar, the surface reflected the entire city and the sky at the same time. The priests said that Quetzalcoatl looks down through it. The Spaniards later wrote about a silver dish that exudes heat. They tried to saw it, but the metal did not yield to ordinary tools, as if the alloy was harder than steel. The jewel disappeared in the confusion of conquests. Only miniature clay copies remain, a flat disc with tongues of flame at the bottom. Archaeologists argue whether it was simply sacred mirror-polished obsidian or a truly unusual alloy. But in the paintings of Teotihuacan, spirals of smoke were always drawn around the cup. Could this really be a hint of takeoff? Today, the cup is being sought in the Vatican archives and the caches of Mexican conquistadors. If it ever surfaces, it will be possible to check the composition and understand whether it was ordinary religion or a memory of some real flying saucer on which the snake god went to the stars. For now, the shiny disc remains the most tempting missing artifact of Mesoamerica. A fire mineral. On the eastern edge of Mars's Valles Marineris, a probe detected a strange sheen, as if the dust were coated with a fine glaze. When spectral analysis confirmed the presence of iron hydroxysulfate, scientists fell silent. This mineral couldn't have just formed. Its formation requires three conditions: water, oxygen, and heat above 100 degrees Celsius. This means that when it formed, Mars was still alive, breathing, and boiling. The discovery site is the Aram Chaos region, where the terrain appears to have been sculpted by a giant drill. Layers of underground ice once lay here, and then something heated them to the point of explosion. The ice melted, the water burst forth, and a crater lake formed, which persisted until it evaporated, leaving behind salts and this mysterious mineral. It is almost never found on Earth. It's too humid and erodes too quickly. The Martian desert became the perfect oven, where minerals were baked like ceramics. Perhaps recent volcanic eruptions or the movement of hot subsurface waters created conditions where water and fire converged at the threshold of life. The temperature at which this mineral formed speaks for itself. Mars was hot for much longer than previously thought. Not an extinct world, but one smoldering from within. Iron hydroxysulfate is not just a chemical rarity, but direct evidence that currents of heat and moisture persisted beneath the surface for a long time. And if liquid water once existed in the depths, then microscopic life could have survived there. Skeletons of giants. Strange notes can be found in the archives of the 19th and 20th centuries. Skeletons up to 3 meters tall were found in the burial mounds of North America. In the Andes, archaeologists spoke of jaws and skulls too large for a human, but almost all of these finds disappeared. Some blame the church, others blame state institutions that cleaned up inconvenient evidence. Myths of different peoples repeat the same thing. The Sumerians wrote about the Anunnaki, tall as towers. The Bible mentioned the Nephilim, sons of God who took earthly women for themselves. Indian tribes told of battles with giants who came from heaven and ate human flesh. Scientists explain the legends as fantasies and mistakes. But why is this motif found among peoples who are not related to each other? And why is it always associated with heaven and gods? If giants really existed, they could have been either another branch of humanity or hybrids of humans and aliens. In that case, the history of our planet is not only the evolution of Homo sapiens, but also coexistence with those who were much larger and stronger. Satellite data. Modern satellite images available through various internet platforms, such as Google Earth, show possible entrances to underground bases in Antarctica. One such example is images showing strange holes in the ice sheet that resemble man-made structures. Satellite images have also been discovered on South Georgia Island, which some researchers believe indicate a possible UFO crash. One such image was found on Google Earth and shows what appears to be a crashed spaceship. The image aroused interest among ufologists and internet researchers who suggested that it could be debris of alien origin. Some of these objects have unusual shapes and sizes that are difficult to explain by natural processes. The alleged UFO on South Georgia Island has often been compared to the interstellar object Oumuamua, which came to the attention of scientists in 2017. Oumuamua, discovered as the first known interstellar object to pass through the solar system, has an unusual shape and trajectory that does not match the characteristics of ordinary asteroids or comets. This has led to speculation that it could be an alien probe or spacecraft.
Monolith on Phobos. Phobos, one of the two moons of Mars, hides an amazing secret, a giant monolith. This monolith, about 85 meters high, was first discovered in images taken by spacecraft. Its size and correct shape raise many questions among scientists. Some researchers suggest that the monolith may be an artificial structure left behind by an ancient alien civilization. This hypothesis is based on its unusual geometry and isolation from other geological forms on the surface of Phobos. The monolith looks like it was deliberately placed in this location. This discovery caused heated discussions in the scientific community and gave rise to many theories. Some believe the monolith may be an ancient beacon or marker left behind for future space explorers. Others see it as possible evidence of alien activity in our solar system. Geoglyphs depicting cats. In Peru, archaeologists have discovered 29 previously unknown geoglyphs. These ancient earthen paintings found near the city of Ica depict cats and human figures. Researchers note that the geoglyphs date back to the period between 300 BC and 100 AD, which corresponds to the time of the Paracas and Nazca cultures. Using drones, archaeologists were able to discern 10 geoglyphs with figures of cats measuring 17 by 12 meters and 8 images of cats measuring 37 by 13 meters. The remaining images represent anthropomorphic figures. Scientists believe that for the ancient inhabitants of Paracas, cats were associated with water and fertility, and they worshipped them as deities. In 2020, a cat figure 37 meters long was found on the Nazca Plateau, which is more than 2,000 years old. As you can see, cats were loved and valued at the same time not only in ancient Egypt. Millions of dollars in UFO surveillance. In the south of England, in the mists of Norfolk, stands an old Royal Air Force base. Once used to track Soviet bombers, it is now home to a man who declared war on the skies, millionaire William Sacheti. He bought the entire complex, along with a massive Cold War-era Type 84 radar, and converted the underground bunker into a UFO hunting headquarters. Outside, there are overgrown antennas, concrete, and rust. Inside, there are server racks, monitors, and an artificial intelligence system Sacheti calls RadarBot. This program analyzes radio signals and alerts you if anything appears in the sky that doesn't resemble an aircraft or a satellite. Anyone can connect to the system, buy an antenna for $25, and monitor the sky within a 200-kilometer radius. The more antennas, the wider the network. He says he doesn't do it for the money. There's no point in being the richest man in the cemetery. But it was here, beneath layers of concrete, that he created something even governments fear: an open database of all strange signals over Britain. Ironically, it all began with a childhood story, when he, a schoolboy in Zimbabwe, saw a glowing spot over a field and heard other children shout, "It's a UFO." Decades passed, and now he has his own radar, his own station, and the right to look into the sky without permission. DNA that doesn't match. We are used to thinking that the human genetic code has been studied inside and out. But in fact, there are still mysteries in our DNA that no one can answer. Scientists call them unexplained insertions, fragments that do not match the evolutionary line. They do not resemble primate DNA, nor known viral traces, nor random mutations, as if these pieces of code came from somewhere outside. There is a hypothesis that some of these sequences could have come to us through ancient contacts, with viruses or even with extraterrestrial microorganisms. It sounds fantastic, but in recent years, scientific journals have openly discussed the idea of panspermia. Life could have been brought to Earth by meteorites or comets. And if so, then it is possible that part of our genetic code is indeed alien. Some researchers go even further. They claim that there are structures in the human genome that are too ordered to be an accident, as if someone left a mark, a genetic watermark. Naturally, official science does not support such statements, but the very idea that we can have an alien trace encoded in us turns our understanding of man upside down. And then we must ask the question, who are we really? The result of random evolution or the bearers of a message left by someone who lived long before us? Sulfur under the wheel. The Curiosity rover rolls along the bottom of an old riverbed in the Gades Vallis Canyon. The stones are just stones, nothing special. One of the boulders cracks under the wheel of a nearly 1,000-kilogram machine, and a pure yellow glow flares up inside. This is not dust, not salt, but elemental sulfur in crystals. This has never been found on Mars before. Sulfur was known only in the form of sulfates, which are formed upon contact with water. But pure sulfur appears under special, almost homemade conditions, as if someone carefully squeezed all the excess out of the rock. For science, this is a gift on two fronts at once. Firstly, sulfur is an important part of the amino acid chain. Without it, there is no protein on Earth. Secondly, the very fact of its existence breaks the previous models of Martian geology. Now, the area where such stones are lying around is becoming a priority point. We need to drill, observe, and build new climate scenarios. UFO on the cover of an 18th century book. The discovery of an image of a UFO on the cover of a book by Johann Funk, published in 1716, has caused widespread controversy among ufologists. This image, depicting a classic flying saucer surrounded by bright lightning, is seen by many as confirmation that alien visitors visited Earth as early as 300 years ago. Despite controversy over whether alien visits actually occurred in the 1700s, the find confirms that people of the time were also interested in the idea of extraterrestrial civilizations. As always, people are divided into types. Some believe in UFOs, others are skeptical about such assumptions. Ufologists wonder about the technological development of aliens. Assuming that they actually visited Earth in the 18th century, how did their technology remain unchanged for 3 centuries? This refers to the shape of an alien ship. A dark clump. 10 billion light-years away, almost beyond the imagination. It was there that astronomers spotted something that emits no light, doesn't rotate, and doesn't interact with matter except through gravity. It's the lightest of all known dark objects, with a mass 1,000,000 times greater than the Sun. But to the cosmos, it's a speck of dust. Scientists are certain it's neither a star nor a black hole. It's most likely a clump of dark matter. It can't be seen directly, but gravity distorts the light of distant galaxies, and these distortions can be used to calculate how much invisible mass is hiding in space. This is precisely how it was discovered, by the slight bending of light rays passing by. If the calculations are correct, this discovery confirms that dark matter is not solid, but consists of individual dense clouds that fill galaxies, including our own. They are invisible, but their shadows shape the very fabric of the universe. The paradox is that the smaller the object's mass, the more it reveals about the structure of the cosmos. This clot is like the fingerprint of an unknown creator, too precise to be a coincidence. Ritual table in Tava Tepe. In Azerbaijan, a team of Italian and Azerbaijani archaeologists discovered a 3,500-year-old ritual table in the ancient settlement of Tava Tepe. This place is located near the borders of Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan. During the excavations, a round-shaped adobe building was found. The structure includes a kitchen area and a ritual table. Between 1500 and 750 BC, late Bronze Age and early Iron Age, nomadic peoples probably used Tava Tepe as a resting place before traveling through the mountains. Archaeologists found a ritual table with 8 recesses and many ceramic containers, bowls, vessels made of black-fired ceramics, and long flat stones for mixing food. In the corner of the kitchen there is a thick layer of ash and clay tokens with fingerprints which could serve as food coupons. The entrance originally had wooden columns and a thatched roof covered the entire complex, which was about 15 meters in diameter. Animal bones and discarded pottery were found outside. The human figurines placed in the sacrificial pits and the fact that the structure was sealed along with all the utensils indicate its ceremonial nature. Sarcophagus of Lord Pakal. Lord Pakal, also known as Pakal the Great, was the ruler of the city of Palenque in the Mayan civilization. He reigned from 615 to 683 AD and is known for his significant contributions to the city and its culture. Pakal the Great left behind many architectural achievements, including the Temple of the Inscriptions, in which his sarcophagus was discovered. The lid of Lord Pakal's sarcophagus is decorated with complex images that have given rise to many interpretations and debates. It depicts Pakal sitting in an unusual position, surrounded by symbols and hieroglyphs. Its position and surroundings have given rise to various interpretations, including theories about contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. Eric von Daniken, a proponent of the ancient alien theory, interprets the images on the sarcophagus lid as evidence of Mayan contact with aliens. He claims that Pakal is depicted in the position of a spaceship pilot, with his arms, legs, and back supposedly controlling some kind of device. According to Daniken, this indicates that Pakal could be associated with extraterrestrial technology. Archaeologists and historians offer alternative explanations. They believe that the images on the sarcophagus symbolize Pakal's journey to the afterlife and his connection with the Mayan deities. Pakal's pose, in their opinion, represents him as an intermediary between the earthly world and the world of spirits, and not as a pilot of a spaceship. Could Lord Pakal really be an alien? This hypothesis remains highly controversial and lacks scientific evidence. Despite the interesting interpretations proposed by Daniken, most scientists tend to consider these theories fantastic and not based on real data. Other artifacts found at Palenque and other Mayan cities support traditional interpretations. For example, numerous inscriptions and images show scenes from Mayan life, their religious rituals and mythological beliefs. These finds confirm that Pakal and his sarcophagus were part of the Mayan cultural and religious context, rather than evidence of extraterrestrial contact.
Mars sold at auction. A small piece of rock weighing 24.5 kilograms was brought into the auction room at Sotheby's in London. But this isn't just any rock, it's a fragment of Mars, cataloged as NWA 16788. It's the largest known Martian meteorite found on Earth. It sold for $5.3 million, and as usual, the buyer's name was not revealed. The story of this discovery began in 2023 in the Sahara Desert in Niger. Local prospectors spotted a brownish-red chunk covered in a molten crust among the sand. This is how the surface forms upon atmospheric entry, the moment when the space rock burns and melts on the outside but remains cool on the inside. This hue is Martian, and its surface chemistry is completely consistent with the samples once returned to Earth by the Viking probes. When the meteorite was cut open, it contained olivine crystals, porphyry inclusions, and tiny gas bubbles, identical to those detected in the Martian atmosphere. It's hundreds of millions of years old. This piece was once torn from the planet's surface by an asteroid impact and wandered through space until it fell to Earth. Now it belongs to a private collector. Perhaps it will be displayed in a museum, or perhaps hidden in a safe. It's hard to believe, but it's a fact. Someone now has a fragment of another planet on their shelf, direct evidence that Mars was already sending messages to us long before we learned to send ours. Each such meteorite is more than just a stone. It's a courier that has traveled millions of kilometers to remind us that the connection between Earth and Mars began not with rockets, but with celestial impacts. A living meteorite? In late August, a Panamanian man identifying himself as Keen posted a video online that immediately went viral. The footage showed a small stone lying in scorched earth. Something dark and shiny resembling tentacles was oozing from cracks. When touched, they scorched leaves, and the stone itself seemed to breathe, emitting steam. Keen claimed to have found it in a crater after a flash in the night sky. For the first few days, it seemed like a fantasy. But then Keen showed that the object was growing, especially in the light. He kept it at home and later in a safe because it's quieter at night when it sleeps. He claimed to have sent samples to friends for analysis, but the results were never published. Scientists were slow to comment.
Social media debated the possibility ranging from an alien organism to the mundane antherus archery mushroom known as devil's fingers. It really does grow out of the ground, emitting a foul odor, and in the dark it looks almost identical. But many things didn't add up. The shape was different, the structure was metallic, and the glow wasn't typical of either plants or fungi. Kin continued filming. In the final video, the object is completely enveloped in growths, as if the stone had transformed into a living mass. The account has since been deleted, and the videos remain only in copies and mirrors. The story could, of course, be fake, but the very phenomenon of how quickly such stories garner millions of views suggests something else. Humanity needs a miracle, not because it's real, but because it brings back the feeling that the cosmos could invade our everyday lives at any moment. Tombs not for people. Archaeologists are used to interpreting everything in the usual framework. If there is a stone box, then it is a sarcophagus. But in Egypt and Peru, there are burials that do not fit into the human scale. In Saqqara, there are granite boxes weighing 60 to 70 tons. They are processed with jewelry precision, but inside they are so huge that the body of one person would look like a crumb in them. For several, inconvenient. Why such dimensions? On the other side of the world, in the Andes, tiny stone sarcophagi were discovered. Their proportions are so small that an adult body simply does not fit in them. The official version is that these are burials of children or symbolic rituals. But then why were they made with the same skill as royal tombs? Another mystery is emptiness. Many of these sarcophagi do not contain traces of burials. No bones, no burial objects, as if they were never used as tombs. And then a version appears that these are not tombs, but capsules. Containers in which those who were not human were once stored or transported. Too big, too small, different. Perhaps this is where the answer lies as to why the myths of almost all people speak of gods who came from the sky. Fossilized waves. The Curiosity rover has been driving through Gale Crater, a vast basin over 150 kilometers in diameter, for the past 12 years. Its cameras have long since become accustomed to dust, rocks, and the endless horizon. But recently, strange structures have appeared in the images, rows of small ridges extending in one direction like frozen waves. Scientists have long debated what these are: traces of wind, sediment, or tectonics. When the data was compared with models of Earth's sedimentary processes, doubts disappeared. These ribbed patterns are left by water, real waves that lap the surface of a stagnant lake. An ocean isn't needed for them to form. A depth of a meter or two and moderate wind are sufficient. This is precisely what the atmosphere of Mars might have been like at that time. The water was swaying, leaving ripples on the sandy bottom, then dried, but the imprint has survived for billions of years. This discovery seems insignificant, just a few square meters of relief, but it changes a lot. Previously, it was thought that ancient Martian reservoirs could have been hidden beneath ice, like those in Antarctica. Now we are certain that at least in one place, Mars had an open water surface where waves reflected the sun's light. Curiosity continues to climb toward the summit of Mount Sharp, and each new layer of sediment reveals another page of this planetary chronicle. The wave layer is perhaps the last page of a time when Mars was still alive. Fake giant. Spring 2025. The internet explodes with a video. A UFO as long as a skyscraper seems to be floating over Arizona. The internet is full of clickbait headlines: 1,000 feet, Zrenia, shot with a drone. The video collects millions. OSINT detectives are quick to join. The first discrepancy is that the object's shadow does not match the position of the sun. The second is that the frame's metadata was created by the same software plugin that 3D artists use. Another hour of work, and the author himself admits that it was a portfolio render and he did not think that everyone would believe it. But the virality of the video has already won people over. The media printed it, bloggers discussed it, experts gave comments. The result is simple. One successful fake makes more contacts in an evening than all the real radars in a month. The lesson is simple. In the age of clicks, 3 seconds of graphics are enough for millions to decide that aliens have arrived. Verification takes longer than the lie is spread, which means the next giant UFOs are already on their way. They don't even need to take off. They will be picked up by the social media recommendation algorithm. Discovery of Noah's Ark.
In 1959, Captain İlhan Durupaner, while working on aerial photography for NATO in Turkey, made an unexpected discovery. At an altitude of 2,000 m, he noticed unusual geological formations resembling the contours of a huge ship. This discovery caused a lot of controversy and speculation that the found remains could be Noah's Ark. The discovery attracted the attention of both scientists and adventurers. Despite numerous expeditions and research in subsequent years, it has still not been possible to find clear evidence confirming the biblical story of the Ark. However, this region continues to be a subject of scientific interest. In support of the possibility of the real existence of events such as the biblical flood, geological studies in the Black Sea region have shown that a catastrophic flood did occur about 6,000 years ago. This could be caused by massive melting of glaciers, which led to a significant rise in global sea levels. In addition, clay tablets dating from the same period have been found in Mesopotamia. One such tablet describes the story of a great flood and the rescue of various species of animals on a ship, which has notable parallels with the story of Noah in the Bible. These findings indicate that the motives for global disasters and ship rescues may have deep historical roots that permeate many cultures and civilizations. Strange object hovering in the sky for several hours. According to Islamic scholars, there are verses in the Holy Quran that indirectly hint at the presence of extraterrestrial life. Perhaps this is why there is more and more information that residents of Islamic countries such as Pakistan are witnessing UFOs. On January 25, 2022, in Islamabad, a local resident watching the sunset from the roof of his house noticed a mysterious black object hovering in the sky. An unidentified thing, more reminiscent of a flying stone, was motionless for several hours. Changing its shape over time, the object became like a triangle. It is noteworthy that the flying object did not emit or reflect light, completely freezing at an altitude of about 500 meters. The local resident was shocked and watched the object with interest, filming it on his phone as he had never seen anything like it. Experts who watched the video are skeptical about the discovery. Pakistan is a country with high military potential that is actively developing unmanned aerial devices. It is likely that what was seen was a loitering munition or a drone performing a test flight. Despite the fact that the discovery was made in 2022, the video is of rather poor quality. This does not allow experts to make an unambiguous verdict, leaving a chance for the extraterrestrial origin of the mysterious object.
A medieval helmet on Mars. On August 5th, the Perseverance rover photographed a strange rock. In the image, it looked like an old helmet half buried in sand. The top was sharp, the sides smoothly converged, and the surface was covered with numerous tiny spheres. Scientists named the discovery Horniflya and immediately noted that such a texture had never been seen on Mars. These tiny balls are spherules, mineral formations that form through weathering, sedimentation, or the action of water. But on Horniflya, there are so many of them that the entire surface appears to be strewn with pearls. This cannot be explained by simple erosion. Perhaps groundwater saturated with mineral salts flowed through the rocks for millions of years and each drop left a mark. Or conversely, a flow of hot gases etched the surface, leaving behind scorched bubbles. The rover's instruments have recorded similar structures before, but never in such numbers. On Earth, such a formation is typical of areas with active hydrothermal activity, places where underground water meets heat. If this analogy is correct, then Jezero crater was home to more than just moisture, but to a circulation similar to that which sustains life at underwater volcanoes. Perseverance is currently working on the northern edge of the crater, ascending through sedimentary layers like an archaeologist traversing the floors of an ancient city. And with each meter higher, it becomes increasingly clear. This helmet is not a random shape, but yet another reminder that the planet wasn't always a dead desert.
Martian coral. On July 24, 2025, the Curiosity rover sent a picture that initially made scientists freeze. On the rock was a shape that was all too familiar to us from Earth. It looked like coral. A real fossilized coral is evidence that Mars could once have had an ocean full of life. NASA was quick to explain, no biology, just minerals that took on a bizarre shape due to water and wind erosion. A rock, not an organism. Our brain itself draws familiar images where there are none. The official version sounds logical. Too logical. But how many times have we heard the same thing? A rock accidentally looks like a statue. A shadow accidentally looks like a tower. A shape accidentally repeats the pattern of a living creature. At what point does the number of these coincidences become proof? Maybe this really is a trick of nature. Or maybe we're just not ready to hear the main thing. Mars was alive, and that's why we're so drawn there, because deep down, we're returning home.
They were looking at the sky long before us. If you think that the history of UFOs began with the flying saucers of the 40s, you've missed a couple of millennia. Sumerian priests, 2nd millennium BC, write down in cuneiform black meteors changing shape. For them, these are divine signs, but the essence is familiar. Something appears in the sky, and there are no words for it. Nuremberg, April 14th, 1561. At dawn, residents see an air battle. Hundreds of balls, crosses, and a black dart falling beyond the city walls. Artist Hans Glaser carves the scene on a sheet of paper. The true meaning is known only to God. We would call it a mass UFO sighting, but back then it was an omen. Mount Rainier, June 24, 1947. Pilot Kenneth Arnold reports 9 shiny objects jumping like saucers on the water. Newspapers confuse the metaphor and introduce the word flying saucer into circulation. Thus begins the modern era of UFOs. 3,500 years have passed from signs to newspapers, and the questions are still the same. What flies above our heads, and why does each generation see this as its own sign? Monolith in the middle of the desert. In November 2020, in the Red Rock Desert of southern Utah, a helicopter crew and biologists were counting livestock when they noticed something startling. Approaching the mysterious object, they discovered a large, shiny silver object located in a canyon inaccessible to humans. Utah authorities tried to keep the discovery a secret, but soon data about it was leaked on social networks. People struck by the object called it the Utah Monolith, a remnant of aliens. A mysterious metal monument that found itself in the middle of the desert has become the subject of fantasies and the rich imagination of people who believe in the existence of more intelligent civilizations living on other planets. It was assumed that this monolith was left by an alien spaceship so that they could contact us. Many were convinced that the monolith was built from alien building materials. The materials have unique properties that are not found in nature on our planet. The metal and ceramic composite is capable of absorbing radar waves. It is known that alien ships with anti-gravity properties can have a similar alloy. Some believe that the U.S. government not only knows about these materials, but is also using the remains of alien ships to create the next generation of weapons. Experts carefully checked the monolith to determine the type of metal and also tried to find cavities in the mysterious object. Despite all the theories and speculation on social networks, scientists are convinced that the monolith was created by man and perhaps placed in the canyon only to become a manifestation of the beauty of a work of art.
Shiva Linga. In the city of Sirsi in India, there is a unique place of pilgrimage, Sacsayhuamán Linga. Here, amidst the natural beauty, there are stone images of Shiva Linga which delight with their appearance, especially during the Maha Shivaratri festival. At this time, the water level in the river drops, making the sculptures visible and attracting thousands of pilgrims and tourists who want to see and worship the sacred lingas. Shiva Lingam is a symbol of Shiva, one of the main deities in Hinduism, representing the source of creation and destruction. Interestingly, there are not only religious but also scientific controversies surrounding the Shiva Lingam. Some proponents of theories about ancient astronauts argue that the Shiva Lingam may be a powerful technological device, similar in function to a modern nuclear reactor. Based on the shape and properties of the lingam, they suggest that ancient people may have used advanced technology. On the other hand, modern scientists may interpret the Shiva Linga as a symbol of atomic energy, which also has the potential for both great benefit and destruction. This analogy emphasizes the dual nature of Shiva, who in the Hindu tradition is both the creator and the destroyer.
100,000 people and millions of tons of resources. When Elon Musk talks about Mars, it sounds less like a dream and more like an engineering plan. He recently reiterated a figure that has forced many to reconsider their notions of colonization.
For a sustainable community to emerge on the Red Planet, it will take not just a dozen explorers, but at least 100,000 people. Musk argues that a single landing is not enough. The planet must become self-sufficient, producing food, energy, oxygen, and metals. The colony must survive even if Earth ceases to function. This requires delivering approximately 1 million tons of equipment and resources: factories, reactors, domes, and processing systems. It sounds crazy, but Starship, he says, is already designed for this task. Each rocket will be able to carry up to 100 tons of cargo and launch every few days. Mars shouldn't be a backup, Musk says. It should be a second home. Can a project where the initial conditions are closer to penal servitude than utopia be considered humane? But if we look at the bigger picture, Musk is simply describing the natural course of history. Once, ships sailed into the ocean, now into space. And perhaps these very 100,000 will become a new form of humanity. People born under a different sky, for whom the sun is no longer the center, but simply the nearest star. Chichen Itza and its mysteries. Chichen Itza was of great importance to the Mayan civilization as a political, economic, and religious center. This ancient city, located on the northern Yucatan Peninsula, was an important site for rituals and ceremonies related to the gods and astronomical phenomena. Erich von Däniken, known for his theories about ancient aliens, paid attention to the El Castillo Pyramid, Temple of Kukulkan, in his research. He suggested that the accuracy of the pyramid's architectural and astronomical elements may indicate Mayan contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. Däniken noted that pyramids like El Castillo could have been built using technologies unknown to modern scientists. The symbolic meaning of the light shown in the steps of the El Castillo pyramid during the equinoxes is associated with the cultic veneration of the god Kukulkan. During the spring and autumn equinoxes, sunlight creates the illusion of a serpent descending the steps of the pyramid. This phenomenon was interpreted as the return of Kukulkan to Earth, confirming the importance of the Mayas' astronomical knowledge and their ability to design architecture in harmony with the movements of celestial bodies. The Mayans believed in the return of the god Kukulkan, a feathered serpent who symbolized rebirth and renewal. This belief was based on ancient myths and texts such as the Popol Vuh and the Mayan codes, which describe the cyclical nature of time and the return of the gods at certain points in history. Kukulkan was an important deity associated with wind, water, and fertility, making his cult especially significant to the agrarian Mayan society. Modern archaeologists interpret these finds as evidence of the high level of development of astronomy and engineering among the Mayans. They believe that the pyramids and other structures of Chichen Itza were built taking into account complex mathematical calculations and observations of the movement of celestial bodies. The mystery of drops disks. In 1938, in a remote area of China in the Bayan Karaula Mountains, archaeologists discovered amazing artifacts, drop disks. These disks, made of granite, have a diameter of about 30 centimeters and a thickness of approximately 1 centimeter. They attracted the attention of scientists with their unusual appearance. Each disc contains a central hole and cut spiral grooves reminiscent of tracks for playing sound. That is, they look like vinyl records and perhaps contain the sounds of ancient people, nature, or even something alien. Most intriguingly, the grooves on the discs contain microscopic characters that resemble hieroglyphs. Researchers say these symbols may be a form of ancient writing encoded in spiral patterns. Translations by some scholars suggest that the discs may tell of an ancient civilization known as the Drapa, which may have had contact with extraterrestrial beings. According to legend, the Dropa tribe arrived on Earth about 12,000 years ago from a distant star. But unfortunately, there are practically no artifacts left from them except these records. The Dropa discs remain one of the most mysterious archaeological finds, raising many questions about possible contacts between ancient people and aliens. Alien ecosystem. On the remote Puna de Atacama Plateau in the Atacama Desert, located at an altitude of over 3,650 meters on the border of Argentina and Chile, archaeologists have found a unique ecosystem with crystal-clear lagoons surrounded by salt flats. It rarely rains in this region and the sun creates extreme conditions. Last April, geologist Brian Hynek and microbiologist Maria Farias discovered these lagoons while studying satellite images and went there.
Despite the difficulty of the journey, the researchers discovered 12 lagoons with a total area of 10 hectares surrounded by barren mountains. Beneath the water were green mounds called stromatolites, microbial communities that form massive fossils. These formations resemble stromatolites from the Archean era of the Earth, when there was almost no oxygen in the atmosphere. Hynek believes this lagoon may be one of the best examples of early signs of life on Earth. In the Atacama lagoons, formations are composed primarily of gypsum, a mineral often found in fossil stromatolites. Hynek noted that conditions in the lagoon are reminiscent of ancient Earth. Lithium will be mined in this area, so the unique ecosystem will most likely be destroyed.
$2 billion for silence about aliens. The famous ufologist Stephen Greer is again in the spotlight. He said he received a generous offer from a high-ranking U.S. government official, a man he calls one of the leading UFO experts. According to Greer, he was offered a huge sum to just shut up. Greer founded the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence back in 1990. In recent years, he has repeatedly claimed to have had contact with aliens and to be running covert government operations. His reputation is controversial even among ufologists. Some see him as a bold whistleblower, while others see him as a fanatic without evidence. He said that in 1992, General Albert Stubblebine, the former head of U.S. military intelligence, allegedly personally offered him $2 billion to give up public activity. At the time, Greer was in his early 30s, a young doctor, and according to him, he seriously considered it, but refused. He believes it is all part of a larger disinformation operation involving the CIA and other intelligence agencies. The host of the podcast where the story was told expressed doubt, calling it hard to believe. But Greer insists he is willing to take a lie detector test and his wife can confirm everything he said. However, General Stubblebine died in 2017 and can no longer refute or confirm the story. Venus, the planet that breathes. If Mars is called our potential second home, then Venus is hell. Everything there is against life. Heat of 500 degrees, pressure like at a depth of a kilometer in the ocean, and clouds of sulfuric acid. But in 2020, the world was shocked by the news. Phosphine was discovered in the atmosphere of Venus. On Earth, it occurs in 2 cases, in the laboratory and as a byproduct of living organisms. Back in the 70s, Soviet probes transmitted mysterious pictures. They showed objects similar to stones that changed position. Scientists rushed to attribute everything to technical defects. But after the discovery of phosphine, many remembered these photos. And now the question sounds different. What if there is life on Venus? Not the one we are used to, but different. The one that has learned to survive in acid clouds and use poison like air. If life exists where it should not be, then our Earth is not a unique miracle at all. We are no exception. We are just one of the forms that accidentally survived on our planet.
New Roswell video. Almost 80 years have passed since the strange debris was found on a ranch in New Mexico, but the Roswell story has come alive again. A 22-minute video suddenly appeared in the U.S. National Archives without commentary or annotation. The title is simple: The Roswell Incident. The footage shows a gray field, scattered metal fragments, and a crater resembling an impact crater. Everything was shot on old film. Users compared the landscape with eyewitness descriptions from 1947, and the matches were eerily accurate. Someone saw a vague silhouette resembling a body in the right corner. Experts were quick to dismiss the interest. The archive isn't evidence, just a repository. Most likely, the video is related to documents from the Mogul program when the U.S. launched balloons to monitor Soviet nuclear tests. The official story is that a weather balloon, the debris of which was mistaken for a flying saucer, was discovered. But for UFO fans, the appearance of this video is a milestone. The National Archives isn't an anonymous forum. They don't just upload random fakes. Why the video has only just appeared there now is a question no one can answer. And perhaps that's the crux of the Roswell story. Even if the mystery has long been solved, each new fragment brings back the feeling that somewhere beneath the dust of the past, metal still lies that doesn't belong on Earth. If all this is true, it means Earth's history is far more complex than we think. After all, UFO tracks lead both into the sky and underground, and that's good news. So let's keep digging. Thanks for watching. Bye, everyone.